Hey, welcome back. Hi, Raleigh. Welcome to Monkeytime. We love getting in your living rooms. I know everybody's talking about going on YouTube and TikTok and wherever, but people flipping through the channels, sitting on their couch. I know what you do. I know how you do, and you're just kind of flipping through, and here we are. We're talking about Raleigh. My name's Todd. Welcome. We're here with Zainab Baloch, who was the candidate for mayor in the recent Raleigh election, and thank you for joining us.
Of course.
Yeah. I thought you were such a fantastic candidate. Your positions were really progressive, and I just wanted to give you a chance now that the election's over and we have a somewhat progressive council to give you a chance to talk about some of the issues that were important on your campaign and maybe kind of get a little bit deeper into some of the issues affecting Raleigh right now, or facing Raleigh right now.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the things that that you talked about on the campaign trail was a police accountability board, a community oversight board for police officers in Raleigh. And there was a lot of mealy-mouthed kind of, well, maybe, no, we don't really need it, and we can't have subpoena power because the legislature won't allow cities to have subpoena power. But it's one of the issues that you were just very clear on. And can you talk about what kind of vision you have for some sort of police oversight in the city of Raleigh?
Yeah, so I've been organizing with PACT, or the Police Accountability Task Force, for the past 2 years, and one of the things I learned was that people are pushing for this, the data is there, the research is there, and the racial discrepancies are there. Yet our council's been asked multiple times about putting this board on, and there's been no move on it. It's just been kind of getting upset at people for speaking out, in a sense, and it really—
How dare you criticize the police?
Exactly. And I think any time anyone criticizes council that's away from that, I don't know, that YIMBY movement, it takes a backlash, and people forget the real progressiveness of it. When you have an organization that's failing it's a good amount of its people, you have a responsibility to do something about it. Saying that legislator doesn't allow subpoena power. So it's going back and looking at the root cause. Why do people want a police accountability board? Because they're not being heard, and they realize that right now council's not hearing them. They're not understanding or prioritizing the problems that happen in Southeast Raleigh, and specifically to people of color. So in a sense, we're going to create this police accountability board because we know the residents of Raleigh and the people of Raleigh will hold them accountable versus the people that we've elected. So. And
you say the data's there. You're talking about police stops in Raleigh and Wake County and people of color getting stopped more. When you say the data's there, the research is there, what do you mean?
Yeah, so like 67% of low-level marijuana arrests in Wake County are people who are African American, yet they only—
67% of low-level marijuana arrests are black folks.
Yes, they only make up 21% of the population. That is above the national average. You have a higher rate. Our gun violence increased almost 40% in 1 year. We are going in a place where both, partner with both poverty, racism, you're creating a society and a city that's just not for people making lower incomes, lower wealth.
You had a post on Medium where you talked about this at length and linked to a couple of studies. And when we air this, I'll go ahead and we'll put this up on my Twitter feed. The thing that I noticed was when you look at the number of searches that happen for people of color, Hispanic folks and African American folks, they're much higher. But when you look at the percentage of searches that result in contraband being found, it's about the same, around 16 to 19% for black folks, white folks, and Hispanics. But even though the amount of contraband found per search is about the same, the number of black folks being searched is much higher. And that's the kind of thing that you think we should be talking about.
Yeah, we should. I don't know any type of moral person that wouldn't see what's wrong with that, and to say there's, the argument you always hear back from that is there are certain groups or something that, that's just how it is, and that's not how it is. We've created that racism man-made thing, and we've created this system of division.
Body cameras.
Yeah.
Should there be specific penalties in Raleigh policy for when police don't turn on their body cameras? And are there now? And and from what I understand, there aren't specific penalties spelled out.
Well, I mean, just last week you had Dickie Thompson say that police problems aren't a problem in District A, and it was like the most like just ridiculous thing that I've heard. And I think on the body cameras, why have a policy if you're not going to enforce it, right? If the body camera is supposed to be on, if an officer doesn't turn it on, that's against the rules. It's against his job, and there should be consequences, because that makes sure that we have officers be mindful of the fact that it needs to be turned on and that all the actions that are happening are being watched. Not because we want to catch an officer in a bad setting. Like, I think people like mistake being like, we're not anti-police, we're anti-bad cop, right? So like there's a difference between wanting the police department to grow versus like not wanting bad cops who just don't treat people right. And
you say that in one of the things I read from you, you were saying that Raleigh actually has a lower number of cops per citizen, per 100,000 citizens, than other cities of its size.
19 per 10,000.
19 per 100,000?
19 officers per 10,000.
Per 10,000,
residents,
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's lower than the national average.
That's lower than that. And why do you think that is?
I mean, I think it comes down to like, we might verbally praise our police officers, but at the end of the day, the council hasn't given them more money. They're still living paycheck to paycheck. Most of them can't afford to live here. So the city is not being made for them either. And when you don't put resources into, you know, when you got counselors saying this isn't a problem in District A, why would they approve for more officers? It's not happening in all the districts.
So better pay for officers, more affordable housing in general. Let's move to that, since that's a hot issue now. Do you really think these little granny flats in the backyards of people are going to really address Raleigh's affordable housing issue? Because, you know, Mary Ann Baldwin's all for the granny flats in the backyard. Is that really a solution for affordable housing?
We can pretend it is. So that's in the first 90-day plan. I think that I think we're lying to ourselves if we think that that is a solution to affordable housing. It's an option and it could increase housing, but there's a lot of, like, I'm not against having ADUs, but I do feel like there needs to be some type of regulation on how you enforce them, because in other places what you've seen is ADUs become this place of where landlords, you know, create kind of, you know, you have slumlords, you have places that are not up to code, and people who live there, you know, can't afford to speak out or be heard because it's the only place they need to be in. On the other hand, you have places that, you know, might just be, of course, for like aging parents, or it could just be another, you know, place to rent. It's not always shown, it's not a, there's no way to say it will help the affordable housing crisis. I can't see how many people in the McMansions are going to give their ADUs to a low-income, you know, family. Just that reality, while people think it's there, just, I don't know, it's never shown in history to be that way.
So it almost seems like a middle-class solution for upper middle-class people who have the extra space to do this, or landlords who would then abuse it and create these sort of sub-apartments and rent those out, or maybe put them up on Airbnb or something like that. Yeah, and I mean, I think there's benefits to it. I think it hasn't been studied enough, but I don't think that if you want to solve the affordable housing crisis, this is not the solution to it. What steps do you think? There was the bond, the affordable housing bond, that didn't get a hearing because Nancy McFarland didn't like it and they couldn't get an extra vote. And Corey, the District C councilman from Southeast Raleigh, left the room so he wouldn't have to vote on it, which that was so sketchy, Corey. I mean, everybody in Raleigh knows exactly what happened. You know, work emergency. You just for that vote, and you came back a few minutes later. And the argument was that this was not the right time for the bond. We didn't have enough time for a March 2020 bond. Is that one of the and $30 million? Saige Martin was saying $30 million isn't enough. You know, and so are we going to see Saige Martin and Jonathan Melton, these new progressive gay members of council, actually push for a larger scale housing bond and get it on the ballot in November 2020? Is that something that we should push for, or is that worth doing? What is it worth doing? Let me just ask that. I'm asking too many questions.
I think that like right now, how Raleigh seems to solve problems, which affordable housing we need to put money towards. Like we have to put a large amount of money towards it. However, we seem to fix everything with bonds, or we think everything gets fixed with bonds, which yes, we need a bond. We need to have various revenue streams going towards affordable housing. This isn't the only fix. On top of that, we can have policy changes. We can, there are a lot of people who during the election talked about getting rid of exclusionary zoning, or specifically, like single family zoning, and making it easier for people to build, denser, build more duplexes, different types of housing.
Instead of these single family neighborhoods that
Yeah.
basically hate renters.
Yeah, I mean, single family zoning was created during a time of segregation. The point of it was to segregate the city. When you look at Raleigh, it is segregated by race. I mean, people get uncomfortable when we say that, but that is the truth. There is literally people of color and white people. Now, when you can see that on a map that clearly, for me, that's a problem. If it's not a problem for other people, I don't think that's not back on me. It's back on someone else's morals and values.
And you endorsed Saige Martin and Jonathan Melton during the campaign. Do you think that they're going to be, or did you endorse Jonathan?
I endorsed Saige.
You endorsed Saige. Okay, I'm sorry. Do you think he's going to be a voice for this kind of, for fixing this kind of thing? Increase, going after single-family neighborhoods and increasing the variety of homes the zoning allows?
I believe Saige will. I believe he. That's all he talked about in his campaign. He talked about a lot of, fighting for the people who haven't been heard, and I believe that he will continue that. I think he has a base that rallied around him for those issues, and not just because he's a politician. And they will hold him accountable if he doesn't.
It's a little unfair to ask you what Saige is going to do. So, Saige, if you're watching, I was the first openly gay person on Raleigh television. Period. Right, Carol? Got a lesbian director. Ed is queer friendly, I believe, is the term they use now.
Saige is so fun.
But Saige, I'm very interested to. You'll be getting an invite as well, both you and Jonathan, to talk about this. Let's go on to the soccer stadium. We don't have much time, and things are going to move quickly here. You had one of the most vocal answers. Who put out that survey, that questionnaire? The developers group that put out a questionnaire was a little.
It was the people doing the soccer.
The
men's soccer league here. The NFC.
But your answer was really articulate, and you raised a lot of good points about why we shouldn't be using public money to help John Kane build this soccer complex. Can you articulate a little bit of that?
Yeah, we shouldn't be using public money to fund private interests. Like, it's very simple. But on top of that, that area specifically it's an opportunity zone, which was put in place by the Trump administration. It was meant for low-income communities, and to redevelop them and bring more prosperity and economic possibility there. Now, putting a soccer stadium there doesn't seem to bring any type of, all the research and history and all the data shows that only, I believe, 2% of economists agree that it brings back the economic opportunity.
Public money investment, it doesn't pay for itself.
It doesn't pay for itself. Even stadiums themselves don't bring back the economic benefit that people think they do. That area will be gentrified. That area will not. That specific land might not have people on it, but all the people around it do. I also think it's completely unfair for, John Kane said he did a community survey. You went to the community, nobody said, the main leaders of the community said they were never contacted. So to say that that's what the community wants is a lie.
So more information about exactly what community survey John Kane says he did.
He should release that community survey he did.
You also pointed out that John Kane asked for money to expand North Hills in 2007, and public money, and he didn't get it, and he built it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So why? He
doesn't need our money. He doesn't. He doesn't need it.
Yeah, and in this opportunity zone, especially, does it seem like he's taking advantage of that zone to do something that it wasn't intended for?
I mean, I think that
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what I got from.
I think as a business person, he's a damn good business person. But I think that I know that place, and anyone who understands, and I'm sure he's done his research, knows that that's not going to help the community that's there. It is not.
It's going to create something different there.
It's going to push them out.
How much time do we have left?
We have 12 minutes and 50 seconds.
Okay, great. So the economic developments or the economic benefits of these kinds of sports stadiums are overstated. Is that a fair statement of
Yes.
what you believe?
Yes.
And you think the research shows that?
2% of economists say, only 2% of economists agree that it brings the economic benefits that people say it will.
Well, but
So
98%
say no.
98% of developers say it brings them tremendous economic benefits. So we know what's driving this, right? What do you think about the regional perspective around here? I mean, we're Raleigh, but is there much of a focus on, Raleigh interacting with Cary, interacting with Morrisville, interacting with Durham, interacting with Chapel Hill? Is that the triangle as a whole? There was almost no focus on that during the campaign at all.
Yeah, I think we got asked that question like once. I think that we see ourselves as like superior, and like because we have more people, so like we don't always think of the entities around us. However, the areas around us have become a lot more progressive. They've become places that we might be holding them up at this point in terms of like transit, in terms of innovation. And I think we have the power to as well. That region aspect wasn't brought up other than Durham wants to be its own thing. Should we allow it? Like, well, Raleigh can't decide what Durham's going to do. And also Durham you see progressive change happening there with their council. You see them realizing that they need to take care of their most vulnerable. And you see a culture and you have a feel in Durham. I've been asking people, I'm like, hey, like, there's this question of like, what's the brand of Raleigh? Like when you think of Raleigh, what do you think of? And most people are like, I don't really know. Like I just think of Raleigh. It's a clean place, I heard today. And I'm like, I was like, all right, like that works. But like I asked that question and that's the continuous answer. And I think that brings to like light of what we need to focus on, what we think the vision of our city looks like, and what we want to be known for.
When you were at a forum with firefighters and Raleigh police officers, I believe, people were asking questions about the police and community engagement with police and things like that. You made a comment after a bunch of other candidates had spoken that said that, where you said that the answers they were giving to the audience of police were very different from the answers they were giving just a couple of weeks earlier at a forum in Southeast Raleigh. Can you give some specific examples, and what were you talking about when you mentioned that?
It was very interesting throughout the entire forum to kind of see where candidates either spoke more passionately or less passionately about things. And it was great for me because I could say the same 2-minute stump speech in each one because I had the same message every time. But I think that was specifically around you had Charles Francis, who he was, he said he wanted a police accountability board, and he did, but sometimes with power, without power, that kind of fluctuated. And same with Marianne Baldwin, Southeast Raleigh. It seemed like, you kind of played up like, I want a police accountability board, but in the police community, it's more like, I want better pay for you, which obviously it's there, but we believe and trust in our officers, so making it seem like there's only one or the other. You can't believe and trust officers and believe and trust the community. It just seemed, it was very misleading.
Interesting. One of the things you said at a City Club forum I thought was interesting, so I'm going to quote from this because I've written it down. Raleigh's politics is pretty corrupt, you said. Candidates are running on promises of equality and affordable housing, yet these same candidates are accepting money from luxury real estate developers who are pushing working families who have lived here for generations out of Raleigh. Raleigh's politics is pretty corrupt. Do you stand by that? Do you think that's true?
Yeah,
And
definitely.
what do you mean by that?
what I mean is exactly what I said there. Like, we can't say that we want to do something for affordable housing and then get funded by people like John Kane, who have literally gentrified areas. But also the fact that, like, it is developers who are specifically luxury real estate developers. There's many developers who are, just family developers, et cetera, but then you have luxury real estate developers who've realized the market in this area and they're taking advantage. And for us, we see, price tags, people liking us versus like, hey, this is a unique place and we need to guard it and be wary of who we let in so our residents aren't taken advantage of. And I mean, I do find that corrupt. I find someone who gives tens of thousands of dollars to Trump and has held fundraisers for some of the most worst and conservative politicians in history. I don't want him running the vision of our city.
And this would be John Kane.
This is John Kane.
He's a Republican.
Yeah,
almost certainly voted for Trump. Would probably vote for him again.
Yeah, he's not just a Republican. He's a Trump Republican. Like, that's this.
And Marianne Baldwin and all these progressives, Saige Martin.
They just ignore him.
They're taking money from him, right?
I mean, yeah. And I think that, like, you can't ignore those things. Like, you can't make it okay sometimes and then call it out another time. Like, you can't, if you're going to take money from people who support Trump and people who are gentrifying, have made Raleigh the 9th fastest gentrifying city in the country, then I don't know, I have to question your values and what your actual vision is for the city.
You call yourself a progressive Muslim. I'm a progressive gay man. There seem to me some conflicts in how Islam, even progressive Islam, well, I don't know about that, but Islam handles the issue of civil rights and equal rights for gay and lesbian and transgender people. There was one case I just read about recently, I think it was down in Florida, where a school district with a lot of Muslim families objected to a queer inclusionary curriculum. How do you balance a progressive vision on things like gay and lesbian rights, trans rights, bi rights, with your Muslim faith? That's something that always strikes me as interesting to see how people do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a person of faith, for me, I've lived my entire life around, I serve God by serving people. And I believe in the rights of all people. And especially coming from a marginalized community, I can very much empathize with the LGBTQ plus community because I understand what it means to be marginalized and hated for either whether what you look like, what you believe, or who you love. And at the end of the day, it's wrong, and everyone in this country, everyone in this city deserves to be treated fairly and with equal rights, and that's exactly what I've stayed consistent in that throughout my entire campaign.
Gay and lesbian marriage, you're okay with that?
So for me, I think it's an interesting topic because, I mean, at the end of the day, that's the right of people. They can marry. And for me, I have that separation of church and state. And when I decide on policy, I'm not going to decide based off of what one religion says versus the other. It's going to be decided on the people and what the people want.
The Constitution is helpful there too.
Yeah.
Everyone should be treated equally. But you have reservations yourself personally with your faith about gay or lesbian marriage, that kind of thing?
I feel like it's, for me, for example, like it's not something I've really thought about as much. I have always seen marginalized communities kind of in one light. And because of dealing with just so many other issues in the Muslim community, it's not one that has really been talked about or anything in our communities at all. Like, I mean, we have to have 24/7 police presence. So in our minds, it's like worrying about security and safety, and that's just not a conversation that's been brought up.
There are definitely Muslim, gay and lesbian, trans and bi and plus folks. I'm sure there are some in the Islamic Center, here in Raleigh. I'm just wondering there. 3 minutes, okay. Yeah, it's just one of those things where I also have an affinity for marginalized communities, and I think that some of the discrimination you've faced has just been horrific. And it's just, and I read the comments, and it's just, people are just so awful. I know, read the comments, right? Don't read the comments.
But like sometimes it's so hard, and I'll get so mean, and people
Yeah.
are like, "Stop!"
I saw you.
My mom was like, "Stop! You can't respond."
I
to me."
saw you on Twitter going, I am going to respond to you now. I can't do it. No, Zainab just did that last
was
week.
so
Was it last
mad.
week or
It
the week
was
before?
last week.
She was just like, all right, that's it. I'm going to start talking to you guys. I'm going to start saying how wrong you are.
They got so like now it's just gotten so much worse post campaign.
Yeah. Oh, really? Post-campaign?
Yeah, we were
Really?
getting like 30 a day. I don't know what happened post campaign,
wow.
but yeah.
Oh, that's terrible. That's terrible. Well, it's something that, as a gay man who's lived through a significant sea change in the way the United States deals with gay and lesbian rights and LGBTQ rights, and then the backlash that we're seeing now, and it looks like those rights are extremely tenuous. I'm always interested to see how other marginalized communities and religious communities, how much they will support us if we're supporting them, you know, and it's just one of those things that I'm constantly looking for. What's next for you? We don't have much time left. What's next?
I will support you.
Okay.
Just to,
All right.
putting that to make that clear. It's what I'm trying to figure out. The issues are still there. I keep being told you can't be an activist and a politician, and that's very much becoming very clear. However, I mean, you can't be a politician of what people define politicians as. I think I'm really going to focus on organizing and figuring out what policies to bring up, what exactly to push forward, and seeing how we can push forward our progressive policies even when we're not in office. Because if you don't have political power, you still have people power. So.
And so continuing to do that, I'm thinking I'm just going to start going to city council meetings, and you get 2 minutes, right? They meet every 2 weeks.
You have to sign
I'm thinking
up
maybe
2
they can
weeks
get them to
ahead.
get sick of me. Just, hey, you know that WeWork building that's up there now? WeWork is cratering like crazy. 30 seconds? All right, well, anyway. So, keeping the conversation going and really keeping the pressure on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I really
you for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
Yeah,
No, I
yeah.
appreciate
Oh, well,
it.
it's great to be back, and you were a wonderful first guest. I really
Yay,
appreciate it.
thank you.
We're going to keep doing this,
I'm
and
so
if
excited.
you have suggestions for a guest, feel free to let us know.
Yeah.
We're back. Monkeytime is back. We're going to be doing a half hour with local luminaries once a month, and they'll be rerunning it throughout the month. So keep an eye out on Channel 10. Anybody who lives in Wake County can get a cable access show. Costs $70, and they'll waive it if you're poor, which they didn't do for me because I'm poor, but just over the line.
Student loans.
Anyone in Wake County can get a show. So come on, call up Raleigh Television Network. Great, thanks so much.